Goes up on the outside to be running.
But in three major states, Sydney, the end of their carnival, Brisbane, the commencement really of their winter carnival, and Adelaide, the first of 3 big weeks. Let's start though in Melbourne, where not a lot happened nationwide except for a bit of a disaster at the end of the day. Keith, not a good story for racing here yesterday.
No, it wasn't, Bruce. Racing was cut short. The last 2 races were abandoned when the axle on the starting stalls broke. Now, I would have thought that the day the wheel was invented was the day that the axle was invented. And these, some centuries on, you would have expected that racing would not come to a halt because of stalls. There should be a second set.
What sort of money's involved, Keith? How much money might be lost to the industry or
well,
in turnover?
Turnover of probably $1 million at least, plus all the inconvenience for everyone concerned, Bruce. It should not happen again.
Just before we introduce Max and Wayne Wilson, who rejoins us today, Alf Matthews, talking about Adelaide, what's his latest situation involved in that, horrific fall with Origin yesterday? A real tragedy, the horse having to be put down.
Yes, I spoke with Alf's sister this morning. She says as Alf's asking for the number of the truck that hit him, he's got 2 small fractures, one beneath the elbow and one in a leg. He'll be out of the saddle for at least a month, and he's pretty sore and sorry this morning, Bruce.
Bad luck for Alf Matthews. And Max and Wayne, as you both join us, terrible luck with Origin. Max, firstly, a bonny filly having to be put down.
Yes, my condolences to the connections, but Origin was a top-class filly. Just heightens the awareness of the risks in racing.
And Wayne, welcome back. We'll be with you for the next couple of months with Brisbane. The big story, I guess, yesterday, Simon Marshall not making the weight with Scalacci and also being rubbed out.
Yes, well, he was suspended for 6 meetings, Bruce, after the running of the Foster's Cup yesterday, but the 0.6 of a kilo certainly made a difference in the opinion of part owner Alan Bell. Alan feels it made the difference between winning and losing for Scalacci, that combined with the sting being out of the ground. But Alan wasn't too happy with Simon after the race when he declared that 0.6 over.
Wayne, do you think it might make a difference to Simon Marshall's career now? It must be at the crossroads if he can't make 57 kilos, well, 9 stone in the old weights.
Yes, it is a bit of a problem for him. It certainly made a difference with the connections of Scalacci, I believe, because Alan Bell stated after the race that that's the end of it as far as Simon is concerned in his association with Scalacci. But when you're 57 kilos, and we know how tough that Simon does it, he puts a lot into it, but when you're there and you struggle to reach 57, Keith, it must give you second thoughts, mustn't it?
Gentlemen, they're 2 incidents that should not have happened. A, at Sandown, the VATC should have had a second bank of stalls. It wouldn't have happened in Sydney. We've got a second bank at Randwick. And Simon Marshall should not have been allowed to ride Scalacci a ½ kilo over. It's not as if it was 49.5. There would be plenty of suitable jockeys that could have ridden Scalacci at the correct weight, and they should have been employed.
Well, Max, the opportunity was given to the connections of Scalacci to employ another rider on the day. Ray Murray took Michael Friedman, representing the Friedman stable, into the room, and he said, we've got several jockeys, I believe Steve Sharman, Gary Palmer, Mel Shoemaker and Tony Earhart. Murray suggested those names to Friedman. He said, no, we'd rather be with the jockey that knows the horse, the jockey that the horse knows as well, and he felt it was quite significant that Marshall ride the horse. But you're right, and Murray wasn't too happy with the situation. 0.6 over when you're up on 57, it can make a difference, all right.
Murray should have taken the initiative and said, take your choice of the other jockeys.
OK, it's a pretty fair comment, Max. Hard to argue with all of that. Let's start in Sydney racing-wise. Champagne Stakes, good filly, good colt. Max, she looks like she'll go right on now, I saw it, and I thought the ride of Di was outstanding, didn't you?
I can't bag the ride of Di, but have a look at this field. They're crawling along. They went their first 800 metres in 53.6. You'd kick your hat and go faster. This was a farcically run race. The credit of Di, he allowed his horse to take up the vanguard position, but there again, Grant Cooksley, as you can see, is keeping the filly in touch. It was a great run down the straight, but it was such a badly run race, I don't think it did a great deal for racing. You may say that the finish was thrilling, and that justifies it, but I can't understand why an outfit like Jack Ingham's got 142-year-olds in training, and you've got one in the Champagne and not one that could have kicked them along at least the first 800 in 50.
Well, it's a reasonable point, but I'd like to argue in one way. I mean, some great weight for age racing over the years has been stop, start, slow tactics. We don't have to have a fast race to have a good race, do we?
I think to a degree you do have. I think a truly run race, I said, says it all. If you had all races or the greater percentage of races run badly early, I think it would do a great deal of damage to the competitiveness of racing.
I don't think that race was farcical yesterday, Max. I enjoyed it. And I thought that Shane Dye's just saved that little something and produced it right on the line to give him 4 out of the past 5 champagnes.
Yes, Shane Dye rode well. He led. There were others, though, in the race that pulling their heads off that gave the horses no chance. Cooksley certainly probably wasn't suited up there, but he seized the initiative too. But is it good for racing where you see them crawl along early? I think not. You may disagree.
Max, where do both these horses go? Are they going to Brisbane, or is that it for the autumn?
That's it for the autumn.
Fair enough. Well, they look like being major contenders in the spring, no question about that. The St Ledger looked to be fairly well, truly run. Gee, she can stay, this filly Boart. She'd won twice at 1.5 miles, 2,400 going into this race, and now she's won at 2,800 metres. She looks like she might be a Melbourne Cup horse if she's got the class, Max.
Well, she's got that bit of dash at the end of the race, a bit of acceleration, which gives you the impression she has got the class. Of course, this was not a grouse field by any means, but nevertheless, as you can see, just cruising up behind the leaders there, that when David Taggart clicks her up, that she just beats them in 2 strides, and the 2 strides are coming up now. The early stages of this race, incidentally, will run quicker than the Champagne Stakes. This was 1 3/4 miles, 2,800 metres in this language. But here's Boart coming on the scene, and none of her rivals, fewer chosen, not really offering great opposition, but you wonder at the depth of quality in this field. But still, Boart is a very good filly, and you've got to go back a long, long way before you find another filly that has won the St Ledger. Go back before Farlap.
No, you can go back to 1981, November Rain, Max, but this filly beat the older horses for the first time and ran a course record in doing it, giving David Taggart and the trainer, David Edwards, their first Sydney wins.
Yes, I'm just thinking about November Rain. You sure?
I'll have a shilling on the side with you, Max.
Yeah, raise it a little. We'll make it that McDonald's fee.
What about Scalacci yesterday? I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I'd like to be the arbitrator. We'll look it up. Wayne, Scalacci yesterday, a tremendous performance by C. Winnie. She comes from second last on the inside. There was interference. Simon Marshall's been rubbed out for 6 meetings, or 6 weeks, as you said earlier. Is it 6 weeks, Wayne, or 6 meetings?
No, it's 6 meetings.
6 meetings?
6 meetings, yes.
Now, was this the race for Scalacci in Brisbane? Will there be another race for him, do you think?
Yes, I believe there will be. I believe he'll now go straight to the Doomben 10,000 and prove very hard to beat. Look, I think Scalacci was unlucky in this race yesterday, mainly because of the track, but let's not sit here and talk too much about Scalacci. Let's give credit to this mare, C. Winnie, and her performance yesterday was just super. Because have a look at the start that she gives them coming down the side of the course, and in the straight she gets a brush from Yaradorf, which impeded her finishing burst, and yet she was still able to give Scalacci 4 start at the 250 and run him down. So it's a grand performance by her. That's
Glad you said that, Wayne. I think she's the best sprinter miling mare in Australia.
Well, I'll agree with that, Keith. There she is coming to the outside. Now look at the brush that she gets from Yaradorf here, just as she's starting her winning run. She was just taken off stride there for 1 stride, but here she is. She's still 4 lengths off the leader, and they've only got 100 metres to go. But have a look at the power of C. Winnie at the end. She ran right over the top of them, and she got up to beat Hot to Race and Scalacci. It was a great performance by C. Winnie. And just one further point on that weight issue, Max, I don't want to argue with you, but here in Brisbane, the rules are that they can go 0.9 over before the stewards are empowered to replace them.
Hey, Wayne, argue with him all you like.
Yeah, feel free. Feel free.
Max, has anyone ever said that to you?
No, not at all.
Oh, isn't he polite, Max?
No, I certainly wouldn't want to take anything away from the great performance of C. Winnie and Frank Penfold, who's done a magnificent job with this mare. But again, you wonder if that is the rule in Queensland, whether it is a good rule.
Well, I agree with you there, Max. It is the rule. It is not a good rule, and Ray Murray is, well, he's got plans to try and change it.
OK, well, let's hope he might do that, Wayne, after listening to Max this morning. The Australasian Oaks, very sad yesterday. Aragen, you'll see the fall at about the 200-metre mark. On paper, Keith, I thought this was one of the best Australasian Oaks we've seen for a long time. It's a rather unique situation in Adelaide. They've moved the Australasian Oaks now to the May Carnival rather than February in the last 2 or 3 years, and they run 2 Oaks within about a fortnight of one another. This one over 10 furlongs, and the South Australian Oaks over 1.5 miles. But the big guns were Origin, Danarani and Euphoria and Captiva. But Jorgen Dawn from Geelong in Victoria was successful. From Tranquility, who's bred by Ron Paps, the caller, and she ran a Bonnie race in 2nd place.
Oh, great, and it gave Geelong trainer Peter Tennant his first Group 1 win of his first Group Group 1 starter. Before coming up, and Origin, who started 9-4 favourite, came down in what was to be a fatal fall and giving Elf Matt, there's the fall now, it's terrible, Elf taken to hospital after that.
So Jorgen Dawn's made the big rise. You saw her win at Caulfield. Did you expect that she could make
I didn't think she was up to it, to be honest, but she's responding to Michael Clark's riding. It was a strong win.
Look, I thought that was one of the terrific stories out of that for Peter Tennant, but also Michael Clark to get back as a Group 1 winning jockey. He's ridden very well in Melbourne over the last few months.
Yes, I agree.
Wayne, we're going to lose you in a moment, but big meeting tomorrow. Good calling. Catch you next week. Max, do you want to take next weekend off?
I think I better. I'm punch drunk after Wayne has come in on my blind side.
Well, you've been telling us how to run racing south of your border, Max, for forever. Now you're going north as well. We won't miss you.
Max, take the week off. Keith, you're going to have a couple of weeks
I'll
off.
do the same.
Ron Paps is going to join us from Adelaide next week with you, Wayne, as we look at the big meetings in Adelaide and also Brisbane. We've got a break after this. Rugby union. There's a test match today. This story on Tim Horan.
If I can run back on the field next to Jason, or just run back on the field with the gold jersey, be very proud and very honoured to sort of get back to playing for Australia.